Hello and welcome to Tomorrow. My name is Sarah and the rest of the crew is Lisa, Athena, and Jared. Okay, so what do we have in the news today?
We have that the ghost particle has been traced to its source.
And Crew Dragon has arrived in Florida.
All right, then on the observation deck.
In our next segment, I'll be joined by our three hosts as we teleport them over here, and we're going to have a roundtable discussion about the hurdles that we need to do in order to get people to Mars.
And then we will look at your comments from last week's show. This is Tomorrow, 11/28.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
No, I knew you were going to do that. So I stopped early.
All right, before we get going with the news, we get to thank our Escape Velocity citizens. These lovely people have given us $10 per episode on Patreon or $30 a month on Maker Support. Thank you so much. Please go to those sites and check out what you get in exchange for helping us make this show. Okay, now.
We have some launches.
Rockets.
Lots of rocket launches.
I go to her first. No, I go to you first. All right. So tell us about those rockets.
Okay, so the first launch we had this week was the launch of a Progress resupply to the International Space Station. It launched on a Soyuz 2.1A rocket, and it was the Progress MS-09 launch. Okay. And it launched at 21:51 UTC, or Coordinated Universal Time, on July 9th from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
All right. Ooh, footage.
And
Anytime now.
launch.
Almost. There we go.
I just love how long they keep those engines going before they actually let it launch.
Insane.
Crazy. It's like a whole 20 seconds. I was cutting this video and I was like, well, you know, I have to show all the engines lighting up. But I love that shot there, how they they kind of zoom out and there's all those kids there as well. I think it was really cute to see all those people getting so excited about a launch.
Yeah.
But anyway, once the engine's lit and it finally cleared the tower and took off from the pad, it took 9 minutes to reach orbit, and then 3 hours and 40 minutes later, it docked to the International Space Station. It did an automatic docking, docking. Berthing is when the arm grabs it. Docking is when it goes in by itself. Yeah, so it docked to the Pirs module of the International Space Station. But just in case, if anything went wrong, there were 2 cosmonauts in the Zvezda module, or the service module of the space station. And they were Oleg Artemyev and Sergei Prokopyev. And they were kind of on standby in case, it was going to go off course and, actually hit the station. But everything was fine. They didn't need to take control. It was totally fine. This mission was carrying 2,566 kilograms, or for those of you that don't use metric, that's 5,658 pounds of cargo, fuel, and water. So this was a really, really cool launch. And Athena, I know you were super excited about it.
Yeah, because this is the fastest, it was the fastest rendezvous. I think it was just under 4 hours.
Yeah.
Which is insane, because that's I think that's a record.
Yeah, it is.
Right, that totally broke a record? Okay.
Yeah, for Progress launches. So they managed to get from launch to the station in just 2 orbits. Previous to this, back in 2012, they introduced what they call the fast docking to the space station, which was a 4-orbit maneuver, and that took 6 hours. And then what they've been doing, from way in the past, is they do a 2-day maneuver, and that's what they originally started doing, and they've been able to improve it. But they're not going to use this shorter than 4-hour method with crew just yet. They want to kind of make sure that everything is fine with doing it the quick way with those uncrewed resupply vehicles before they move on to doing it with the crew. So, but if they can you imagine getting from launch to the station in 4 hours? You wouldn't even have to use the not bathroom on the vehicle.
Right?
You could use the space station bathroom, but that's sometimes broken too. So I guess that doesn't fix anything.
It's just crazy because I can't even get to New York in 4 hours. I mean, if you're lucky or whatever, but from LA, that's insane.
It's only 350 miles versus 3,500. So.
Oh, well, this is true. Yeah.
You have to go a lot faster.
Still. It's just cool. It's just so cool. I don't think a lot of people think of it
Oh,
like
no.
that, you know.
No,
but
of course not.
but going to
Because you're actually
space.
going around the Earth
Yeah.
several times to get there, so you're actually doing
The timing
that's
has
much
to
more.
line up as well. Like
Yes.
you have to wait for a specific launch window, and not just the ground track of the space station is over you, but the International Space Station itself also has to be flying over you at the same time for this
they
like
can, like,
4-hour maneuver to work. So you know you can't just like do it all the time anyway.
Right, right.
So is there something particularly possibly dangerous? Is there a reason they're not going to bump up the crew transports? with it?
I think
Is it-
it's more the fact that everything has to line up,
Okay.
number one. So if you have any kind of launch delay, you've
Okay.
got to revert to either the 6-hour or the 2-day maneuver. And because it's only 4 hours, you need to like get all of your adjustment burns like exactly on time when they have to be done. You don't have as much kind of wiggle room to miss out on when you need to fire your thrusters again on orbit. So
Cool.
it's more pressure.
Awesome.
All right.
There's a funny comment in the chat from Old Bill. Sorry. Just wanted to throw that in about the bathroom. You could always stop and get out and go behind a tree.
Diaper. What?
Diaper.
Yeah.
All right, we have more launches?
We do. This one came out of China, so of course, you know, there's always not that much footage when it comes to China, but we did get a little bit. So we had a Long March 2C that launched PRSS-1, or the Pakistan Remote Sensing Satellite, number 1. I guess that means there's going to be more in the future, question mark. And there was PAK-TESS-1A, or the Pakistan Technology Evaluation Satellite. This launched from the Jiaochuan Satellite Launch Center in northern China on July 9 at 03:56 Coordinated Universal Time.
Okay.
It's falling apart.
Wow.
It's not breaking, that's just ice. Actually, no, it's not ice, because this is not, this is a hypergolic rocket. So I think that's like the insulation foam that they put on it. But chat room, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm probably wrong, because this is China, and China rockets are not my expertise.
Thermal protection
They
panels.
don't want them to be.
But this is a 2C Long March rocket, and it's a 2-stage rocket. That uses hypergolic fuels, but this variant, the SMA variant, it actually uses an optional 3rd stage, which is a solid motor. And so it took those 2 payloads to a 640-kilometer orbit. The PRSS-1 satellite does remote sensing, so looking at things like agriculture, urban environments, natural disasters, weather monitoring, stuff like that. It was built by the CAST, the China Academy of Space Technology. They built it, but then they sold it, and now it's operated by the Pakistan Space and Upper Atmosphere Research Commission, also known as SUPARCO. So they do all the operations for the satellite. Now, the second payload was actually built by Pakistan itself, which I think is really cool, because like it's a developing nation, and they're actually building and launching and operating their own satellites, which is really cool. So PAK-TESS-1A was built by SUPARCO, and it'll be doing remote sensing as well. So weather monitoring, agricultural monitoring, and stuff like that for Pakistan. So that's really neat.
Cool.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, man.
So go Pakistan. They're getting into
Yeah.
the space launch orbital business, which is kind of cool.
Cool
So many
picture.
countries.
But that's not the only launch we had from China. We
Wait,
actually
there's
had
more?
another launch from China, and these happened within like 12 hours of each other. It's kind of ridiculous. China was able to launch from 2 different launch sites.
I was going to ask
Okay.
about that. Okay.
Not the same
Those
launch
two,
site,
okay.
but yeah, still really, really cool. Now, the next Chinese launch was a Long March 3A rocket, and it was carrying a Beidou 2 satellite. It launched from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center in southwestern China on July 9 at 20:58 Coordinated Universal Time. This great long duration launch footage here from China. There's so much of it. There you go,
and-
that's all you get.
They're making up for Russia.
Yeah.
But they also provided this wonderful animation as well, so that you can sort of see what's going on. This is a Long March 3A rocket. It is 2 stages of hydrazine rocket, and then the 3rd stage is liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. It put the Beidou satellite into a transfer orbit of 55.1 degrees, and it was a 200 by 35,780 kilometer orbit. It's a transfer orbit or geostationary transfer orbit, and it's going to use its onboard thrusters to circularize. It's actually the seventh second-generation Beidou satellite. So Beidou is like the Chinese equivalent of GPS, but it's a little bit different. And they have 3 generations of these satellites. This is the 7th of the second-generation lot of those satellites. It's actually the 20th launch for China this year, which is kind of a lot for just one country. And I feel like SpaceX has only launched around 18 or 20 launches this year. Space Mike would know. We should have a tally on screen. I think that'd be really cool. Like a tally.
Of like how many? Like,
yeah.
that'd
And
be
then
really
each time we
cool.
like roll a
How many
launch
launches
footage,
have
we
happened?
like bump the number up by 1.
I know.
That would be cute.
Yeah, totally.
Graphics.
Someone should build that.
Wait, I have a question. You said geostationary transfer orbit versus a geostationary orbit.
So this
what are the
is-
differences?
So
get it up
GTO,
and right.
geostationary transfer orbit, is like an egg shape. So the high point is out at geostationary orbit where you want to be, but the low point is lower down. And so what you need to do is that you need to circularize by firing your thrusters to raise up that low point of your orbit to turn it from an egg into a circle.
Oh, that's so cool. Does it constantly keep going between like an egg orbit to
No,
a circle
once
orbit?
you've done the firing to circularize, it stays in that circular orbit.
So cool. Well, thanks for that. I didn't know that.
The things KSP teaches you. Another really cool fact is that Beidou is the word that the Chinese use to describe the Big Dipper constellation.
I was gonna wear Big Dipper earrings today and I couldn't get them in, so I just left them at home.
Oh no, it would have totally matched the
should have
story.
worn them. It's okay.
Do you know what the word means itself?
What Big Dipper?
Beidou.
Oh.
No,
Okay,
just,
sorry.
it just describes the stars.
If you know
of
on
the
chat.
Big Dipper.
Oh, Beidou.
So, I mean, we've got we call it a bear or a dipper or something. I was wondering if they had some, mythical.
Isn't Beidou also the thing that after the bathroom in France and other countries?
Bidet?
That's
Oh,
bidet.
bidet. Okay,
That's
never
right.
mind.
Hot
Okay.
humor.
Okay.
All right, so tell us about them blazars.
Oh yeah, so my turn. So the ghost particle has actually been traced now to its source, which is insane. So any of you guys who are aware at all, the ghost particle is a neutrino and it's never been traced before, but now it's been traced to its source, which is a blazar. So this is an artist's rendition of what a blazar actually looks like, and it's the most extreme class of galaxies that legit exist at all in our universe. They're actually a giant galaxy with a massive spinning black hole in the core, and then it has a twin jet spewing out energy particles and light that you could actually see in this image. The reason it looks like there's like a cone shape facing towards Earth is just because coincidentally, one of the jets was actually facing Earth, and that's how we were able to actually detect specifically the ghost particle. So they generally host like an enormous black hole, these blazars, and they actually formed in the very, very early universe. Astronomers actually measured that the earliest one that formed of a blazar was when the universe was just around 1/10 of its age. So this is actually a graphic I got off of a really cool lecture I was watching about this study. And you can see those little 3 dots on the top, and it was actually a video that showed multiple ones that were actually detected. And this was like super, super early in its universe. So this was, around when the universe was only about 1/10 of its age. So the mass of these is about 3 billion suns. So that's like literally the mass of the supermassive black hole that's actually at the center of these galaxies. And so it's about 750 times bigger than the black hole at our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. So this research was actually conducted by the NASA's Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope. And this right here is an image of the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory, which is actually out in the South Pole. And it's the world's largest neutrino detector. And it's actually about a cubic kilometer of clear ice that actually goes down into like the surface of where it is. And this image right here is actually an image of their light sensors. So this facility contains more than 5,000 light sensors arranged in a grid beneath the South Pole. So it's like legit, like under the ice, which is kind of crazy. And this facility was developed in order to try and figure out where exactly cosmic rays come from, because astronomers up until today didn't actually know where cosmic rays really came from. They couldn't trace its source. And a little fun fact too I want to tell you guys is that neutrinos, the reason they're called ghost particles, because they haven't been able to trace it, as I was saying. So they tend to be unaffected by like anything in interstellar space. So they actually can penetrate stars,
Do
planets.
they like go through people?
Yeah. So like
Do
there's
you feel them right now?
yeah, like they
Ow.
might be, and we don't know, and we're not aware
They
of it. They
absolutely
go
are, yeah.
unaffected, which is
Yeah.
insane. But the researchers at this facility actually were finding out that when the neutrinos tend to, for some reason, come in contact with ice atoms, so like the ice molecules, it creates a secondary particle that creates this like blue cone-like light illumination, and this is how they were able to actually detect the neutrino. So this next image right here is going to be of like the outside also of the facility, and this is an artist rendition, and this is what they kind of estimate of what it looks like with the neutrinos and the cosmic rays entering Earth's atmosphere. And so the cosmic rays are high energy charged particles, by the way, in case you guys didn't know, like protons and electrons that are born really similar to neutrinos, and they actually are created through really like cataclysmic like events in space, like collisions. But a lot of times, again, when cosmic rays tend to get interfered and affected by magnetic fields around space, like intergalactic space, like objects containing magnetic sources, so like planets, etc. So anyway, the way that they ended up figuring this out, what's really cool is they were able to, wait, let me just get through, since I didn't do my script, I was like, wait. Pretty much what's really awesome about this is that in 2017 is when this actually happened, this specific event where they actually were able to, the NASA's Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope, and then also Major Atmospheric Gamma Imaging Cherenkov Telescope, also known as MAGIC, yes, totally, acronym, which is out in the Canary Islands. They actually were able to capture this powerful burst of light that was coming from the blazar. And the blazar's name specifically is TXS 0506 plus 056. So this
No
is
one will
a
ever
specific,
forget that name.
It's
Nice
a
ring
super
to it.
long name,
Yeah,
I know.
just
Totally
off the
not.
top.
I just wanted to like, kind of list that out in case you guys want to research that. But this is the blazar they were actually able to detect it from. So it's really cool. And again, like one of the twin jets that actually came from the center of the blazar was facing directly towards Earth. So this is how we were able to detect it. We were able to detect cosmic rays and the direction in which the neutrinos were coming from. We saw that they were connected, and we were like, okay, we're able to now figure out that it came specifically from this blazar that are some of the earliest galaxies, that formed in our universe, which is insane, and some of the biggest galaxies in our universe.
Right.
So, and it's cool. This is the first time that a ghost particle has been able to be traced. So, yeah, really good inclinations now of kind of just our universe and what's going on and whatnot. So that was
You
exciting.
mentioned that one of the telescopes was called the Cherenkov telescope.
Yeah.
Because there's a question from Loopy Dragon in the chat that asks, is that like Cherenkov radiation, where like ionizing radiation emits a blue glow in water?
Yes, precisely. Yeah, so that's what it was exactly, because that's what happens when that's what they were finding out was when the neutrinos come in contact with ice, which is why this specific facility is in the Canary Islands, but the Ice Cube facility is in the South Pole, and they did that
Lots of
because
ice.
when it comes it comes in contact with ice, or as he's saying here with water, it emits a blue glow. And that's literally, it creates a secondary particle, and that's because we can't detect the actual neutrino, but we can detect its effect on ice. So
That's
that's
so cool.
insane, yeah, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, that's that.
Dude, science is awesome. All right. So just really quickly, blazar kind of sounds like quasar. Might they be related?
So a blazar is a classification of a galaxy. A quasar is a quasi-stellar radio source. Actually, as Dr. Lou was talking last time he was on here, which is also like I guess it's like another name for the galactic nucleus, or a black hole. They formed about like 8 billion years ago, and now they're just like, I think they're like not as strong in their power, I guess, or their emissions. So they are getting weaker. Quasars, they're not as active anymore, but it's definitely different. So quasars,
Really?
yeah,
I thought they were
the galactic center.
Interesting. I thought they were basically the same thing, except a quasar was kind of aimed right at us. We were getting a constant stream, and the blazar was kind of working like a pulsar. So we were sort of off axis, and so it was kind of flinging past us and pulsing at us.
I mean,
It's interesting.
From my understanding,
Yeah.
from what I was reading, is that I read that a blazar is a classification of a galaxy, of a specific galaxy
Interesting.
class.
Jared
yeah,
says that
it
a
was Jared saying.
blazar is an active galaxy nucleus, specifically with a relativistic jet directed towards Earth.
And then the quasar.
He didn't say
So
what
then
a
I guess a
quasar is.
quasar isn't directed towards Earth? Okay, I guess, okay.
All right.
Well, thanks, Jared. Cool.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
Yay.
Okay. So, let's see.
What's up?
I think.
I'm excited.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited for this
Oh my
next
gosh.
story. Okay, all right. Crew Dragon, it's happening! Everybody get excited! Crew Dragon arrived at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida this week because SpaceX seems to be targeting around the end of August for its demonstration mission 1 or DM1. That mission's not going to have any humans aboard because it's just going to be demonstrating the technology and demonstrating that Crew Dragon can make it into orbit and do all the checkouts that it needs to do before they put actual living, breathing humans on board. And this is part of the CCT CAP contract, or the Commercial Crew Transportation Capability contract that SpaceX is completing for NASA. Now, Crew Dragon, before reaching Kennedy, was actually in Plum Brook, Ohio, and it was being tested in the In-Space Propulsion Facility, which is basically like a kind of giant vacuum chamber. It's actually the world's biggest chamber that can test whole stages and whole spacecraft, and it's kind of measuring whether the Dragon could withstand the temperature, the acoustic, sound, vibrational environment, and the vacuum conditions of being in space. And it passed with flying colors. And before that, oh, actually, for scale, this is the huge testing facility. There's some humans for scale. Wow. So this thing is absolutely massive. Like, you know, you've got to be able to fit that whole Dragon inside there. And there are people walking around the facility just on a tour. And then that lid on top actually closes down and seals the chamber. And actually, we have an image here, which is not the same one that Dragon was in. This is vacuum chamber 5 from the same facility. It's slightly smaller. But this is kind of what it would look like on the inside with all those fans to kind of extract the air out there, and a whole lot of heaters to like pump out heat and you know, make the conditions that you need to qualify this vehicle in. And yeah, it passed. Everything went really well. But before this testing, Dragon also underwent a parachute testing on June 26th. There's a beautiful video here. I just love to watch this.
Oh yeah.
So first, the Dragon released drogue chutes to slow it down. And they deployed successfully and started to slow down the Dragon as it was dropped from a helicopter above the Naval Air Facility in El Centro in Southern California. This was the 16th parachute test of Crew Dragon. And once the drogues deployed successfully, then the main chutes were released. These chutes actually deploy in a reefed configuration, and that just means that they're tied closed by reefing lines, and then those reefing lines are cut in a certain sequence to allow the parachutes to start to open and deploy fully, so that you can get the maximum amount of drag there, so that you can slow down the vehicle appropriately.
And gently, I would hope.
And gently. Yeah.
Oh, whiplash for your astronauts.
So Dragon will be using 4 main chutes to bring it down softly for a really soft landing, just like you can see there. The astronauts, I think, are going to have a really gentle ride coming back from space.
So did they do away with the rocket-assisted touchdown?
Yeah, so due to the really heavy regulation requirements that NASA was putting on them, they decided to kind of change tack and go away from the propulsive landing over to the parachute landing. It was just so much easier to be able to get the certification for that, so that they could meet their target deadlines, so that we don't have to keep buying seats on Soyuz from the Russians. We can actually have American vehicles launching American astronauts to the International Space Station to grab that US flag that was brought up to the station with STS-135, the space shuttle, because there's a race on between Boeing, who are making the Starliner crew capsule, and SpaceX, which are making Crew Dragon. And whichever one of those companies sends astronauts first to the space station, they get to get the flag and bring it back. And it's like the most amazing, elite version of Capture the Flag ever.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's such a cool version of Capture the Flag. Or Catch the Bacon. That's like a separate game I used to play. I don't know if anyone played that.
Catch the Bacon?
Yeah, okay, never mind.
No, I need to know. You brought up bacon.
How much would it cost for them to, is there like a price right now for launching and landing with, because I think it was like $80 million for using Soyuz to pay the Russians. What is it?
I believe Crew Dragon's going to be cheaper. There was a price associated, NASA's already contracted and bought a certain number of flights for Crew Dragon. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I'm sure the chat room will let us know what that was.
Dope.
So if you just take the cost of that contract and divide it by the number of flights, then you'll get per flight, and then Dragon can carry 6 astronauts, I think. So divide that number by 6 and you get the per seat amount.
Plus
that's if they put fill it to max capacity at each flight. We don't know what's going to happen there.
Plus the benefit of not having to train all of your astronauts in Russian.
Yeah, well, they would still need to learn how to speak Russian, because half the space station is Russian as well. It operates like that, so you need to be able to communicate with your crew members.
But getting that fluent in it. to pass their restrictions.
This isn't all the testing that Dragon has been doing.
No.
Yeah, there's still more. There's still more.
Oh my gosh.
So much has happened with Crew Dragon. Like, I had to do this whole story because it's just amazing. On May 20th of this year, Dragon went into an anechoic chamber for some testing. Anechoic.
Yeah.
Well, if you break it down,
Yes.
if you don't know what anechoic means, if you break it to an and then echoic, it means like no echoes. So it's a chamber that that contains all electromagnetic radiation and like sound vibrations as well. So you don't get any echoes, which is pretty neat.
I need that for my room.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And this was to test it for do electromagnetic interference testing, which
Right.
again it passed.
All right.
Which is why it's now in Florida, almost ready to go. I'm so excited.
That's exciting. When is it going to go?
Demonstration mission 1 is maybe late August, early September. And then the
soon.
mission that will have the first crew on it is targeted for maybe the end of this year or the January of 2019.
That's so
But no confirmed dates have been confirmed anywhere. So
Will it be birthed or docked?
I believe Dragon is going to dock because it's going to cut like the astronauts are going to pilot it in. As
okay.
opposed to the
Birth, which is
the
that.
original Dragon, which is birthed because the Canadarm has to reach out, grab it, and dock it to the, birth it to the station. So
That's so exciting.
We're getting there. A
Yeah.
round table.
Yeah,
Gotta get to Mars.
I'm excited.
Gonna be-
I'm excited.
oh my gosh.
Coming a little
Okay.
bit later. Okay.
But
I want to
oh,
ride on Crew Dragon. That would be so cool. And then I could call
Same.
myself a dragon
I
rider.
was gonna say, then we could say we rode on a dragon.
Yeah.
We're in the same wavelength
Oh
right
my
now.
goodness.
Yeah.
Does
legit.
that mean if someone makes a spacecraft and calls it a
Unicorn? We ride a unicorn. I was
my
thinking that too.
it's gonna be glitter painted.
It will be
I've
glitter
lost control
painted.
of the show.
You said no script.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, Muamua.
Oumuamua has been classified. A Oumuamua, that like cigar-shaped crazy object that we all were talking about a couple months ago, is a comet. So they classified it now as a comet. There's a whole bunch. There was a lot of debates about this. I was reading online. Still, a lot of people are arguing a bit about it because there's still no traces of ice detected on Oumuamua. And generally, as you guys know, comets predominantly are made of ice, and they also have a tail. And also, they haven't been able to actually detect any form of a tail on Oumuamua. And so the ones who came to this conclusion is the lead astronomer Marco Michelli, and he's from the European Space Agency, and he's also the lead author of this study that was published in the journal Nature. And the way that they actually came upon this conclusion was because of its trajectory. So it seems that it's not influenced at all by the gravitational forces coming from the sun and the other planets that are in our solar system. Generally,
Oh, it's
when you
spinning.
have, so generally when you have like an asteroid or some type of space rock that comes into our solar system, it'll get really affected by gravitational forces, again, like I said, from all the different planets in our solar system, and it'll start to pull on it a bit, slow it down, but it seems to not be slowing down as fast as it would be estimated to be if it was an asteroid or some type of space rock. And so because of this, they came to this conclusion that there must be some type of outgassing effect happening. And outgassing is what happens with comets. That's what actually causes the tail. It starts to lose parts of matter, it spews out gaseous materials, and that's usually actually what causes the tail of a comet. The only thing though is with Oumuamua, okay, so here's an image of like a typical comet. So this is what the outgassing effect causes, generally because of this icy material and passing through the interstellar medium, interstellar space. It starts to have like an outgas effect, and even especially too if it's going to be passing through our solar system, it starts to emit this like illuminated tail that we can usually detect. But with Oumuamua, it's so minuscule that like legit we can't see it. It doesn't seem to actually have any type of tail. But it is enough to actually affect its trajectory. So because of it actually losing some of its gaseous material, it actually is affecting its trajectory in a way where it's not slowing down like we had estimated. Now, the only other thing, too, about it is it has this really super complex rotation, as we were showing in that last video, which actually made it really difficult for astronomers to first figure out its shape. And that's because the way that they found out that it was rotating so dramatically was because its brightness every 7 to 8 hours would dip. So it had 7 to 8 hour period, and because the brightness of it was dipping and the brightening and dipping and brightening, this is what actually had them determine that it's a super long cigar shape. But now, what about the ice, right? Because, okay, so here's also a really cool image. Sorry, I totally put these out of order. I tried to do it in my Uber too coming here, but this, as you can see, is its actual like rotation on its axis. And this is how astronomers came to its conclusion. You can actually see the brightness scale underneath in the little squares. So it goes from dimmer to brighter to dimmer. So this is over, again, a 7 to 8 hour period. And so that's how they were able to actually figure all that out. So now, as far as the ice, there are actually there's a few astronomers right now that don't really agree with this. One of them is actually Alan Jackson, which is actually funny. That's a name of one of my favorite country artists. He's an astronomer from the University of Toronto, Scarborough. And he actually says that technically the definition of a comet that lost most of its ice is really just an asteroid or a space rock. And that's what he says. And again, this is kind of like just a debate of definition. But what do you guys think? It's kind of already decided that it's a comet. But right now, there's going to be a lot more research on Oumuamua because I was actually watching this really cool lecture from the Griffith Observatory by Dr. David Jewett, and he says there's likely going to be around like 10,000 more of these, like there's in our solar system. So there's quite a lot of them, and what's interesting about it is you could see that obviously this is an artist's rendition of it entering our solar system. That the way that these rocks really start to form is because when you have an accretion disk forming around a newborn star, in that accretion disk is where planets will start to form. So they'll collide, and any extra rocky material tends to get ejected outwards, and will essentially maybe become.
So we're just lucky
space
that
debris.
Oumuamua, I can't say it,
Oumuamua, you're right.
did not become like part of Earth. It just comes down to luck.
Well, this came from another star system.
Oh, right.
And actually the reason they figured that out, which I have some stats down here for you guys, is because it is traveling at a really, really fast speed. So it's traveling at about 87.4 kilometers a second. So because it's traveling that fast, we know it came from another star system. It came from like out of space. And this next picture we're going to actually pull up is just some cool facts I grabbed from actually the lecture I was watching. And that's like the estimated size of Oumuamua. It's about 400 meters. In length, and then it's...
How many football fields is that?
Oh gosh, you know what? Typically, I would calculate that. I'm not doing that right now.
It's about 4.
Wait, I don't know how long is it.
A meter is about a yard.
I don't know how big a football field is.
100 yards.
Me neither.
Fields. Oh, okay. I don't go to
I
football.
can math.
Yay! That's why we have you here.
America. No, I'm just kidding.
And so right now, it's estimated to actually leave.
I'm New Zealand.
What?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. It's going to be actually leaving the orbit of Neptune. So it's leaving our solar system now in about 4 years. So that's when it's going to be crossing past the orbit of Neptune.
A space probe out to it if we have 4 years.
Oh, we don't. It's moving way too fast for us to get a.
Falcon Heavy.
Oh, what, to go to it?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean.
We've even lost
sure.
visual contact with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No telescopes
BFR.
here.
Yeah. Let's see if there's anything else I
hurry
was going to
up,
mention
Elon.
in here.
Send the Enterprise.
Yep. So that's, I think, pretty much everything I was going to mention. But I mean, it's just like, it's super cool. So they classified it now as a comet. I mean, it's still like, I mean, these are all artist renditions, all these pictures.
Yeah.
What's crazy, I was watching the lecture about it. The way that astronomers were actually able to detect it is it literally was this tiny little like bright speck on a screen. Like most of astronomy, I guess. Like a lot of times it's just like, it was literally like just a small like white light on a screen. And again, the way that they figured out was because of the dips of its brightness. So it's insane. Freaking insane. But yeah, and so it's now classified as a comet. And but again, there's some astronomers that think like, well, if it doesn't have ice, it's technically just considered like an asteroid or space rock. But what do you guys think? What are your personal opinions on definitions? But that's that. So
Cool.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I have a theory. I think it's an alien
theory?
spacecraft
Yes.
and it's trying
gosh.
to talk to the whales.
Yes.
Why the
And
whales?
We've already said
Whales in space.
yeah,
Whales in
Star Trek.
space.
Star Trek. What is it?
Star Trek 4. It's 4.
Yeah.
Voyage home.
Voyage home. What do
totally
you mean
aliens.
whales? Athena, you've
Directed
seen
by-
Star Trek 4.
Why are they talking to whales?
No.
Have you not
Oh
seen
my
Star?
gosh.
Oh,
No, I
we're going
haven't.
I
quick.
also haven't
How
seen
about we
this.
just watch
Oh
it
my
right
gosh,
now?
the younglings.
This is
What
terrible.
Do we do?
This is awful.
Okay, we're gonna
We're
have
having a
like
Star
tomorrow
Trek-a-thon.
movie day.
I was
Yeah,
just
this is
watching
terrible.
Star Wars the other day.
Oh,
The Final
oh my
Jedi.
God.
It was
Oh,
great.
no.
Finally catching up.
Oh my
Look,
gosh.
I used to watch Star Trek when I was very young, and I watched like all the seasons on VHS. I still have it on VHS. You have a VHS player? Exactly. So I'm gonna have to find it somewhere.
Wait.
amongst this.
The original series?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's on Netflix at the moment. Not plugging, but
It is.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and it's been digitized, so they took they didn't obliterate the special effects. They just
Okay.
cleaned them up and made them more palatable to
But my VHS tapes
CG
have all the
audiences.
old like commercials. You know.
They do. I'm sure. It's great.
You should make
But-
a tomorrow VHS
but-
tape.
We should. Anyway. Okay.
We're going retro like Guardians.
That would be fun.
Why do I
Crash
need this
record.
pencil to use my cassette?
Yeah. Cool. So that's a moo.
Okay. All right. That was a digression. Thank you. Okay. So, oh my gosh, how do I round this out? Let's see. We are going to take a little break, and then we will be back for our roundtable discussion about how we are going to get to Mars.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back. Now, before we get into our roundtable today about the biggest hurdles that we are going to have to overcome in order to get a crewed mission to Mars, I first want to thank our Escape Velocity citizens. These folks give us $10 or more per episode on Patreon. But also, we can't forget our Orbital citizens as well. They give us $5 or more per episode on Patreon, and they get a lot of really cool stuff. Not only do they get their name in the show more than we do, they also get early access to After Dark. They're on our Discord all over the place. You get to see our rundowns. You get to see us, trying very quickly just before the show starts to get things in. You get voting rights on upcoming roundtable discussions, which I would like to point out today's roundtable was voted on by the citizens of tomorrow who have those voting rights. So this roundtable today is all you. And if you would like to know how to help support the shows of tomorrow, because we cannot do this without you, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. And we got all the goods there. And today, as we mentioned earlier, you all voted on this. So this is what we're going to be talking about today,
Yay!
which is specifically what are the hurdles that we still have to overcome in order to get a crewed mission to Mars, because that is sort of like the ultimate goal of this current time period. Sure, back in the 60s, it was, get somebody on the moon, for political reasons, which we won't go into on the show. But for us now, we're looking at the red planet. That's sort of like where all the eyes are squarely faced on right now. Everything else in between seems to be sort of enabling getting to Mars, because that's like the ultimate goal, That's what we're making all the movies and all the books about, is getting people to land on Mars. So, I guess to just kind of start with you, Sarah, and we'll kind of just go across the table right here.
Okay.
What do you think is the biggest hurdle for getting a crew to Mars?
Radiation. Yeah.
Radiation.
Yes. At the moment, only 24 humans have ever gone outside Earth's Van Allen belts. And they have, it's tenuous science because it's a small study group.
Yes.
But they have had cardiovascular issues ever since the Apollo trips around the moon and to the moon. We don't know, we can build a big Falcon rocket and send people to Mars. We can figure out the process, we can repeat the lunar process, but I think we don't have a way to bring radiation shielding with us.
Gotcha.
Something to replicate Earth's magnetic field. Because, you'd need a sheet of lead or a block of ice or drag a dipole behind your ship or something. So we need to figure that bit out before we can get there.
And it's not just radiation on the way to Mars
No, it's not.
either.
Yeah,
it's
it's
radiation when you get to Mars as well.
Absolutely.
Continuous.
Because Mars has not only does it have a tenuous atmosphere, it has an unbelievably weak magnetic field
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, oh, we land on the surface and that handles everything. No.
No.
You still have to contend with it even on the surface.
Absolutely.
I think it might be a little bit easier on the surface because you could just, chuck a bunch of regolith on top of your base.
Yeah.
Or whatever you live in when you get there, your cube or whatever you feel like doing. Radiation is really big, and we'll come back to that in a little bit too. Sort of how do we solve that?
Yeah.
Athena, over to you. What's the biggest problem getting a crewed mission to Mars?
I think it's being Earth reliant because we're still human beings, we're Earthlings, and we're very reliant on our sources here. And so it's going to be extremely difficult, I think, there's a lot of obviously plans of action for when we get to Mars with recycling whatever the sources are that are there. But I think that still we're going to have home bases being Earth. And I think that until we actually can feel comfortable being away, further away than where the International Space Station right now is, because the International Space Station isn't that far from Earth.
You can get there in 4 hours now.
Yeah.
Exactly, word.
Throwback to news.
Exactly. Exactly. So I feel like honestly, just being Earth reliant is a huge thing right now, and I think until we actually can create some form of secondary Earth resources, not just on Mars, but on whatever spaceship we're going to be using to get us to Mars is super important, because I think that right now we have a lot of means for transportation, but not so much means for colonization, and I think that that's a major obstacle course right now.
Yeah. So essentially the reliance on Earth.
Yeah.
So we need to look at things like in situ resource utilization and other things like that. Sort of something that we'll talk about a little bit later, because we were discussing in lines for roller coasters yesterday. We'll talk about that a little bit in just a bit. So Lisa, what do you think is the biggest hurdle?
I mean, I was going to say radiation, but I think it's kind of a mix of things. I don't think that there's just one thing holding us back, because I think you need to get all of these parts together at the same time, to be able to get there efficiently. We could solve the radiation problem, but then what if we spend all our time trying to solve the radiation problem and we haven't solved the food systems? Or what if we spend all our time on the food systems and the radiation, but we've forgotten about psychology and picking the right people to go? I think that's probably a really huge one, but yeah, I think they all have to be worked on together at the same time, and I don't think we could go until all of those things are ready. So
and those are some really valid points. Which are these are genuine unknowns that we really don't have a lot of good data points on as well. Especially with the psychology stuff. I mean, you were talking about sort of being able to see the Earth. What happens when you're no longer able to see the Earth? What happens when you realize that at that point that you're 2 years away from being saved if something goes wrong?
Yeah.
So
Or even just seeing it, even if everything goes right, you're still 2 years away from seeing home again.
Yeah, there's that too. So for me personally, in what I think is the biggest hurdle for getting to Mars is everything. I think that the funding is going to be a huge problem. I think that the international cooperation is going to be a bit of a problem too, because to me it's not just going to include our current partners. We need to also have other people involved with it too, and that's a very big hurdle. The amount of mass that we can chuck at Mars is a very important thing, especially if we're going to have radiation shielding and other things like that.
yeah, that's true.
Landing on Mars, we've only been able to land maybe a ton on the surface of Mars right now. Getting anything above that is a very big unknown quantity at this point. And then surviving on the surface of Mars and dealing with things like the psychology of that as well. So, kind of going with that a little bit. What do you guys think are some of the unknowns that we could answer before we start sending people to Mars?
I think doing more cislunar missions. I think that's a big thing for psychology, because I'm reading actually a couple comments in the chat right now. One is from Space Geek. He says, people went to the poles, climbed mountains, and navigated the world. We have psychology down, I think. But then exactly after him, Hanny Vorswarp, and I know we all have our own opinion about the show, but in the show Mars on National Geographic, one of the astronauts lost it. So again, I mean, they're not really portraying the best of our moving forward for going to Mars. But I think that having cislunar missions can help prepare the human mentality and psyche for being away from Earth long enough. And and saying, okay, you know what, if I have over I don't know, X amount of days before getting saved or getting back to Earth, I have to learn to really be on my own, really troubleshoot and try and figure this out, and also comfort myself or your other people on the mission with you. So I think that's a huge aid in the psychological aspect, because we need to really like start to experience more, just more time in space, and not just like space where you're close to Earth. Because right now it's kind of like, it's kind of, not to revert back to Dr. Lou, but like he was saying, it's kind of like being in your house your whole life and then just stepping out of your neighborhood for the first time. And then you have to go to another country, let alone. And I think that's what we're doing. So I think it's about time now that we get past low Earth orbit, not lower Earth orbit, as we've discussed once, me and Ben. And I think that, I think that it's really important to now get into like cislunar, which is like that region just around the moon. And so I think that, I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to what you said, for our viewers who are watching that this may be your first time actually hearing some of these terms, cislunar basically means around the moon, and kind of with that there, so which is very cool. So Apollo missions, they were cislunar missions,
The longest Apollo mission, there was only barely a couple weeks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
12
Yeah,
days.
So which one
Apollo
was that?
17 would be
17,
the
okay.
longest mission.
And
Yeah.
then at the ISS, we've had the year-long mission, but besides that, I mean, I think maybe a couple cosmonauts stayed a little longer than a year continuously on Mir.
Yeah, I was going to say on Mir, I think the longest was 400 something days. Don't quote me officially on that, but I know it was in excess of 400 days.
So we haven't even spent enough time in space that would be like required for even a round trip to Mars.
No.
That's step one on the checklist, is can we even like stay in space for that long with all the things that we need before we even get to Mars? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that needs to be done.
Yeah, and the toll that it takes on your body.
Yeah.
Just even the 1 year for Scott Kelly, it took a huge toll on him.
Yeah.
And he was exercising daily.
I was going to ask that. I was like, I'm sure it was the exercising.
Yeah, and so you're going to
required.
feel a little bit of decay, I guess.
Yeah.
That's going to add to the psychological burden.
Well, your body will decay
Yeah.
on the way to
Literally.
Mars.
Yeah.
Literally.
So do
your
we?
muscles decompose.
Yeah. So in a
create
microgravity
injections.
environment, we may not be able to actually have astronauts go to Mars and successfully operate on the surface if they're in a microgravity environment on the way. So it's things like, using your spent upper stage, attaching a very long tether to your spacecraft, and then rotating that to generate artificial gravity. Is that something that we're going to have to do?
I mean, there are a few
Probably.
countermeasures.
Yeah, I mean, or that or cryostasis.
Look for a future upcoming spacepod on human hibernation that may be able to solve
Yeah.
this problem.
That's right. I kind of wanted to ride on what you were talking about, Athena, which is
Yeah.
sort of doing missions in the cislunar space, which is since a Mars mission really doesn't have any business case for it.
Yeah.
There's no reason to go to Mars to attempt to make money, because at this
Yeah.
point you can't. And in probably the long-term future, it's going to be very difficult. Not impossible, but probably, I would say, for the next 100 years at least, it is not going to be profitable to go to Mars.
You know what I'm thinking about as far as like what might be profitable is like medical technology. So we all know a lot of the spinoffs that came from just general like space research. And the first thing I was thinking right now was like, okay, I know that we have like injections for cartilage, and this could maybe be a good like science topic for tomorrow's science, but we have like cartilage injections, right, for people who like have really bad arthritis or wore down their meniscus. I wonder if for, issues like what Scott Kelly was experiencing and like really bad like bone density losses, if through the passion to get to Mars and through that force to get to Mars, there will be an increase in like medical research and
Right.
development for some type of supplement or IV or something that could actually increase our bone density. Like there has to be a way, or like nanites, that type of thing, or some type of something, because like there has to be a way that. And the thing is too, when you think about it, that will benefit people here on Earth too, people that are suffering from osteoporosis. The research that'll come out of the passion to get to Mars and become an interplanetary species can actually help aid people suffering from really bad syndromes and diseases here on Earth too. So I wonder if this might take a couple hundred years, but I think that might be something to consider, because honestly, yeah, like with these really bad radiation risks, I think that something like that needs to go into play for traveling to Mars or elsewhere just be in microgravity for a long period of time. So I just wanted to kind of point that out as I just thought of that right now. I'm like, that might be a good motivation as far as like, money and research and medical, because there's always need for that.
Yeah, and I kind of, go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say mineral resources. So Mars could be a staging area for mining the asteroid belt.
Yeah,
So-
potentially,
Yeah,
very well
so
could.
much
Yeah.
Are there
Yeah.
any minerals on Mars itself that are actually, economically valuable?
I don't know.
Not that I can think of
pretty
right
limited.
Because,
offhand.
it's mostly like iron oxides, right? Which, like rust, which
Right.
is not really valuable for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, but
Silicates,
I was going to say, Vax Headroom in our chat room had a really good sort of counterpoint to what I said about 100 years till profitability of a Mars mission, which is Vax says, I think if a commercial entity brought back Mars rocks, they would sell for millions of dollars a gram. I bet there's a business case there.
That's not
So-
a bad point.
Yeah, and I could think of a
least for
lot
a
of
while,
I could
yeah.
think of a lot of research institutes and other groups that would definitely want to get their hands on a Mars rock, and also you could think of a lot of people who have a tremendous amount of money that
Yeah.
would like to say, instead of buying my McLaren P1
Have a Mars
Senna
rock.
You
edition,
could get like an
oh
engagement
look
ring
at this,
with a Mars rock in it.
yeah, look, I've got. I don't have a table with an airplane engine for its legs. I've got a table with Mars rocks for the 3 legs on it.
That's
How
something
impressive
people
is
definitely
that?
would have.
So
Yeah.
so
Definitely people. I know people that would do that. I think I would do that.
So
For
I kind
sure,
of want to
that's
throw this.
something good.
I kind of want to throw this out because kind of what I wanted to really ask with this here is that could we do a Mars mission just by itself, tossing that big spacecraft, whatever? Let's just imagine here. Can we just throw people at Mars, or are we going to need
As of right to now, today.
No, so I'm just saying in the future, are we going to toss? Can we just toss people to Mars, or do you think that we're going to need some sort of cislunar economy in place to enable that to happen? So is it just we're going to just straight up do it from Earth, or should we stop over at the moon in order to do that? And if we do stop over at the moon, are we going to have to wait for commercial entities to be at the moon, or are we just going to have to do that with the mission that's there?
I definitely think it's smart to stop at the moon, 100%. Because if you think about it, again, that could be a good training facility for people. We can actually start simultaneously, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We can launch people there, have people start training there for Mars. As soon as they're ready to go to Mars, we send more people to the moon. They start training to go to Mars, and it's just like a leapfrog game.
It builds itself up.
I
So-
think it would be such an intelligent, strategic system to do something like that, and at the same time too, start to build up an economy, or colonization on the moon and the lunar surface. And because then also we can be working towards this technology, figure out, okay, what is the bone density loss? What is the muscle mass loss? And calculate that and have direct observations while people are actually living on the moon. And then that's where probably a lot of the development will go in for the science for when people get to Mars. It'll already be implemented. They'll go on the spacecraft with them with whatever the IV is that they'll need or injection. And boom, I just think it would be a lot smarter, to be honest, than to just go straight for Mars the more that I think about it. Which is funny, because when I first came on the show, I was like, nah, Mars. And now I'm like, oh yeah, actually it makes more sense to probably stop at the moon first, because gravity.
I'm having the reverse.
Really?
Actually, yeah. So
Why is that?
What I thought initially was we should go to the moon. Exactly what you said. Develop a training facility and then go on to Mars. But I wonder if going straight on to Mars wouldn't be the best choice. It wouldn't be colonizing right away, but getting people on Mars before going back to the moon. Just an emotional boost, an impetus to go have. And so once we have successfully put boots on Mars, then maybe the moon base would build up.
What if we did both in a dream world?
Right.
If we had
¿Por
just
qué
the
no los
right
dos,
funding,
right?
do both. What?
Yeah, ¿por qué no los dos? Why not
Yeah,
both?
sí, exactamente.
Is
Sí,
there
¿por
is
qué?
there a risk though of if you want to skip the moon and go straight to Mars with what we have today? Is there a risk that what if you send the people there and they don't make it? Is that worse than not going yet at all? Because
Well-
is that going to set us back even further than the path that we're on right now.
I was going to say Zapfan in our YouTube
Zapfan.
Chat has basically said we need to accept risk. Magellan set sail with 280 men,
Yeah.
and 18 came back 3 years later. And Magellan,
Not Magellan.
you know, and Magellan himself
Yeah.
did not return as well. So,
So
that's-
are we too like is NASA and well, maybe not all private companies because some of them are just going for it, but are the majority of us too risk averse at the moment to do that? Is that what we need to change? Is that what's holding us back?
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah. So I got to see a preview of a thing about the Apollo landing and watching the training process for the Apollo program, looking at the hardware. You know, it's a really good representation of it. And NASA today would never have okayed that. OSHA would have shut that program down.
Yeah.
There's no way we could have put the astronauts, today we would use the Lunar Landing Module training pod. It was like a lawnmower motor with some fans attached to it. It was,
I just want to say this.
Yeah.
Don't act like Apollo was some sort of a safe program that
Yeah.
happened. 3 astronauts were killed on the ground
Yeah.
during Apollo. So,
Wow, wait, I didn't
absolutely.
know this.
Oh,
What?
Apollo
The Apollo 1
Wow.
fire,
Yeah.
the pad fire. Yeah.
So they had a
Right,
short.
right, Apollo 1.
Yeah, and all of their material. So they had a really oxygen-rich environment in the capsule, and it was just a test. They were running the equipment checks, and a short happened. You know, the asbestos coating didn't work. Then something happened, and the oxygen-rich environment caught fire, and all of their suits were coated in flammable materials. After the Apollo 1 fire, they changed the surface materials of all the suits. They changed the fabrics that they used, the materials inside the capsule, so that if a fire did happen, it wouldn't spread the way it did in that capsule. So Apollo was us learning as we went, and it did cost lives, and
Yeah.
but was it worth it?
And I was going to say, and Neuropilot in Twitch is also noting that 5 to 6 more died in T-38 crashes, which
Yeah.
are the trainer aircraft, plus 1 more died in an F-104 crash as well.
Yeah.
And also, during the golden age of the X-plane era, there were
Yeah.
multiple test pilots killed during that time period as well. So is that an acceptable risk? Is it something that people are going to allow nowadays?
I think it depends on the group.
I think it does.
When you
Yeah.
have, it depends how we want to get to Mars. Like, we need from the beginning to kind of shape it around, is this going to be an international collaboration of different countries? Is it going to be a private company? Because once you set those parameters, that dictates everything else underneath it. If we're talking about a NASA mission, then it is going to be these risk things that are going to be holding us back. But if we're talking about, maybe SpaceX, then it might be the technology that's holding us back, because they have that motivation and they're already on their way.
So I wonder if maybe jumping off from what you said, if we define it as a world collaborative thing, or if it's one company. I mean, the reason the Apollo missions happened was because the U.S. was in a space race, right? We had a competition going for, in our heads, potentially the fate of the planet.
Yes. We had to show that
Right.
we were better than the Soviets,
Yeah.
So is that
essentially.
what we're
So-
missing this time around?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, what if we need to set ourselves up? We're approaching maximum density for planet Earth. Like, there's not enough resources on
Yes.
Earth to sustain 14 billion people. We just can't.
Yeah.
Or at least with technology as it is today. So what if we do look at Mars as a lifeboat, or we ramp ourselves up some way to make it a life or death thing, and then maybe the risk taking will be worthwhile, instead of, oh, we just lost a life, shut the program down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess because a risk is
Really-
always defined in the benefit that it brings, right?
Yeah.
And right now, we don't really have that clear idea of what that benefit is going to be, because we don't know why we're going.
Yeah.
I think we need to define that why before we
think
can
so.
answer that.
Yeah, and I mean, Gus Grissom, who died in the Apollo 1 fire, before he died, there's a very famous quote of him saying that space flight and the benefits are worth the risk of life. So is that something that we have to return to? with it? Is that an attitude that we need to return to with spaceflight? Because it is very risk averse right now. And I think that comes from a lot of the public perceptions post-Challenger and post-Columbia, which is that there were tremendous oversights that occurred during that. There was definitely failures of hardware, but there was also failures of hubris in that as well. Which, not to say that didn't happen during the Apollo program, but there was that pressing, we need to beat them to the moon during the Apollo program. With Shuttle, there wasn't. Shuttle was more, let's make it everyday, casual. It was almost became, well, who cares? It's supposed to be like a commercial airliner, so I'm not really going to pay attention anymore. Oh my gosh, how could this possibly go wrong?
Yeah, we almost set ourselves up for this shift of mentality by trying to make space available to everyone so quickly. Like the space shuttle is going to become a shuttle, like up to, it's going to be for everyone. But in the Apollo missions, they were test pilots. They were military. We know that they have accepted risk. We don't think the school teacher is going to die.
Yes.
But when the school teacher died, the whole
World. was
we
like,
went,
Yeah.
like,
maybe we
no,
should rethink this.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
super dangerous.
I feel like with a Mars mission that the perception will be back to Apollo, which is that this is the ragged edge of what we're doing. And I feel that perception as well from a lot of people when you talk about a mission to Mars, which is that this really is, right at the bleeding edge of what humanity can do. So I feel like people are going to be willing to go back a little bit on the risk with it and not be so risk adverse with it. But it's still one of those things that definitely comes with it.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to ask you guys too, what are some of the things that we should be looking at in terms of the hurdles for Mars that we're currently not looking at? Like, what are those little
Toilet systems.
What are those itty bitty problems that are going to end up being like, death by 1,000 cuts with it there? So like, what are we gonna? How are we gonna do? What are those things? And
I'm serious
Go
about
ahead,
toilet.
Lisa.
Yes.
I will just say
Okay.
this, Lisa. You were on the High Seas mission.
High Seas mission
So
6.
you actually have experience, essentially, in what it would be like to live on Mars, because you did it for a
For a
amount of
limited
time.
amount of time, but
But
yeah.
you still have that kind of experience. So what do you think?
So the reason I bring up the toilet is because you have to figure out what you're going to do with all the waste on Mars, right? We have these grand ideals about we'll just compost it, we'll just recycle it, and we'll put it back in the system, we'll disinfect it, and we'll use it to grow plants, and it'll be a closed loop. On High Seas, we wanted to conserve water because on actual Mars, you want to conserve water too. And so we had a composting toilet. It wasn't a flush toilet. It wasn't a pit toilet. It was a composting toilet. So you did your thing, and there was a barrel underneath the toilet, and everything would kind of stay in there, and you would spray like this bacteria spray into it so that you would seed it with bacteria that could break it down and turn it literally into compost. But you had to make sure you looked after it properly. You had to give the right amount of spray. You had to rotate it and keep it turning to keep it aerated. You didn't want to have too much liquid in there, so you had to kind of, there were 4 of us on this mission, and there was the toilet, but there was also a urinal so that, you could limit the amount of liquid going into the barrel, because if it got too liquidy, then you would have this issue where it kind of just becomes this liquidy waste, and it doesn't dry out at all to become compost. It's just a kind of sludge. Unfortunately, that's what happened on day 2 of the mission. And the reason we found out is because at the bottom of the barrel, there's a tray. And what happens ideally is the compost dries out into a dry kind of soil type mixture, and you empty it into the tray, and then you can scoop out the tray and use that compost stuff wherever you want to use it. We would just bag it up to be thrown away. But the liquid on day 2 seeped into the tray, and then the tray overfilled, and then it seeped out of the tray onto the floor, and we had the situation where we had to, we ended up making a device, which I won't name the device because I guess it's kind of crude, but it was a mop used for cleaning up.
Did you have to improvise the device?
Yes.
By the way, so you had to sort of MacGyver a device together and make it happen.
So we ended up getting pieces of rags and duct taping them to a stick. I don't even know what stick we used. Oh, one of the walking sticks for walking on the lava field.
Gosh.
We broke the stick in half, and we duct taped the cloth to it to make a rag, and then we used that to kind of get into the belly of the toilet. toilet and
Really just get right
clean
under the
out-
scale and stab the belly of the beast right where it needs to be at,
and
right?
clean up the liquid, and we had to bag it all up. And but here's the thing: we have limited resources, so we only had so many like gloves and plastic bags that we could use. And this is the kind of stuff that you want to like triple bag because you don't want it leaking out everywhere.
Yeah.
We were running out of bags, and it was just. You don't want that happening on Mars because, again, you have limited resources. You need
Yeah.
to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. So how do we make a fail-proof toilet system? Even the toilet on the International Space Station still doesn't work correctly half the time.
Yeah, it breaks a lot. I was going to say on the third mission of the Space Shuttle program, STS-3, the toilet broke. On STS-46, the toilet broke as well. Had to be fixed by Claude Nicolay, by the way, who ended up, after that, going and fixing Hubble 2 times. So maybe fixing the toilet is a precursor to going and fixing Hubble. So if you want to fix James Webb, get ready to fix toilets as well. Cross my fingers on that. I hope I don't regret saying that. But yeah, I mean, even on Apollo 10, the famous poop incident where a poop was floating around the cabin, something went wrong with the toilet there, and that's like
Humans
you
are
got to
messy,
really
and
think
we
about
need to
things like that.
I don't think we talk about this enough, like because toilets and poop and stuff.
Yeah.
But
But it's such a
not gonna
simplistic
go away.
thing. You know, it's part of human nature, and it's
Right.
something that should have been like one of the first things figured out. Like that just freaks me out. Like this, I can't. Like the incredible technology that we use to send people to space, and we can't fix a toilet problem.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, what?
I like what Chris Radcliffe says here in our regular chat room. You can either make sure it doesn't happen, or make sure people have the tools, training, experience, and materials to fix a wide class of problems on their own. I mean, this is sort of like what we were talking about in some previous episodes, which is that first crew of people that are going to Mars. Who do you want on that crew?
Yeah.
Do you want test pilots? Or do you want like plumbers?
Comedians.
Yeah.
Plumbers,
Doctors.
farmers,
Doctor
comedians, cooks, chefs, and other things like that. It's
Oh, a chef that could take like astronaut ice cream and. Sorry, okay, keep
yeah,
sorry.
and just kind of to continue with what Chris Radcliffe is. Chris Radcliffe, you're hitting it super good in the chat room today, as you always do, which is the NASA approach is to pre-solve every problem. The Maker approach is to cross-train everyone on everything and outfit a complete shop. So is that how we're going to do it? Everybody's going to get training on everything inside of the spacecraft, and you're going to be able to handle that. And when we land, we're going to cross-train everybody as well on that as well.
I feel like cross training is
Absolutely.
like for me 100%. I feel like everyone
Yeah.
should know how to do everything because you never know when someone is going to get incapacitated and
yeah,
the
exactly.
job that they were trained to do,
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
no one else
Yep.
knows how to do it, and you're screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And that's the thing too, is like, that's why I was reading something a long time ago in the chat, this chat's blowing up. Something about also like having robots there like to assist you on the side too. And I was like, that would be really convenient because, they might short circuit, but then you can just kind of put some tools in them. If a human short circuits, they're dead. So, it's like you can't really, their version of short circuiting. And so I think also even having like AI, an AI something that could be there to help out with different things, that would probably be really, really helpful too. But I think cross training is just so important. I think like most humans should be like that, even just living on Earth, because you should be multifaceted in a lot of different realms, just so that you actually, like stuff like this, it's amazing. Because what if you have someone always there, you rely on them to fix something, and then, I don't know, they die or whatever, something happens on the mission. So I think cross-training is really awesome. And I think having an international, to like kind of backtrack a bit, international collaboration is super, super important. I was seeing a comment from Twicked, actually, I can't see it now, it's way back in. But it was just great. I know he was like saying about how like during the space race, like if it wasn't the Russia and US like trying to compete against each other, a lot of lives would have been saved because they would have shared information. And that's a huge thing because we have to realize that other people might realize things that we don't realize, and that's super important about having other countries all collaborate on an actual effort. Oh yeah, there we go. Apollo 1. The reason space race should be banned, had Russia and the U.S. shared info, people would be alive today.
Yeah, that's referencing an incident that occurred during testing in the Soviet Union at that time, where they had an astronaut astronaut simulated on the ground in a pure oxygen environment, and a fire occurred in that environment, extremely similar to the manner of what happened with Apollo 1. So that's what that's referencing there. So. So obviously, as I want to say, Astro YYZ in our chat room has got a good one, which is that medical is usually the obvious cross-train. I think everybody who goes up to the International Space Station has the ability to at least like get you stabilized to push you in the Soyuz and get you back as soon as possible. On the way to Mars, you don't have the ability to put you in a Soyuz and come back to Earth as soon as possible. If appendicitis happens 100 million miles away from Earth, you got to perform surgery, don't you?
Oh gosh.
Yes, but
Or antibiotics.
I wonder if engineering.
Yeah, that's if you catch it early
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
So,
Which, how do you catch it early enough? You're going to have medical diagnostic equipment.
yeah, that's correct. And you have to have also people able to understand, I suppose, the symptoms of themselves as well with that in order to catch things like that early as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of cross training that's going to happen.
I would say the
with this
indispensable
here.
cross train is engineer.
Engineer.
Because if one person has an illness, they may die. If the ship has an illness and the person who died was
That's
the
a really
engineer,
good point.
everyone dies.
could die.
Yeah.
So I mean, medical, absolutely a base knowledge, but I don't think you should be on that ship if you can't fix it.
Yeah.
I think that there's also other problems that you're going to have to contend with as well, like soil on Mars.
Yeah.
Soil is the soil on Mars is toxic. There are
Yes.
perchlorates out the wazoo on that, and that's not good. And in addition to that, the soil is very fine and it's very dry, so there's a tremendous amount of static electricity built up on that
Just
soil
ask
if you
Abby.
move
Oh my
around in
gosh.
it. And the surface is also super rocky. I mean, I joke all the time about I want to take my Jeep to Mars and drive around, but even if I took one of the best vehicle that we could make here on Mars and drive it around Mars, it's going to get shredded. I mean, look at Curiosity on the surface of Mars.
the wheels.
Aluminum
The wheels are getting destroyed right now, and it's
Yeah.
going over, sort of basic Martian terrain. Sure, they're improving it for Mars
Static
2020,
electricity.
They are,
but
yeah.
we got to see that as well. So, also, there's low surface gravity on the surface of Mars as well. It's 1/3 of what we've got here on
Yeah.
Earth. We know how the human body works in 1G. We also kind of have an idea of how the human body works in microgravity, but we really don't have an idea as to what the human body does in 1/3 G long term.
Yeah.
That would be insane. I did like a simulation once. It was inside of it was a treadmill, and then it like trapped half of your body, and it was supposed to be simulating like the gravity on Mars, which was really fun. And it was actually for the premiere of Mars, Nat Geo. So that was pretty cool. But that was just half the body. I can't imagine the full body. Donna actually asks. I just want to point this question out in case someone knows this. Can you even do surgery in microgravity?
Oh, yeah. There was just a study on that, so we don't know. Yeah.
There's your answer.
Right?
No
So
clue.
Surgeons have been looking at the medical records from NASA from the 60s forward, and we don't know because in low gravity, I mean, we're used to doing surgery where gravity will keep the blood in the body down, and you just have to clamp off a little, the vein that you're working near. What happens in microgravity? Your fluids are just going to ooze everywhere.
Yeah.
And once you make that incision, are you going to have like a vacuum right there, vacuum scalpel that's sucking up the blood that you're losing as you're cutting in? Like,
Right.
and then how does the body heal? If you're in a 0 or low G environment, part of what forces our body to heal is the impact. I know that I need to build collagen because I'm, hitting my bones right now. If you don't have any obstacle, if you're not feeling impact, if you're not under stress, your body may not heal properly, or at least in the way we expect it to. So we
Yeah.
would have to adapt to that as well.
Yeah, and that would be pretty
Crazy
difficult
about
to
the
do.
blood. I
So,
didn't even think
yeah.
about that too, because like the
Absolutely.
first thing I was thinking is like maybe as they're cutting in with a knife, there'd be like a little like pocket or something around it that would capture all the blood. But then what about all the blood that would cut inside the body? Because then it could just seep underneath the skin, which would just be that'd be crazy. I was gonna ask about you said that. The soil on Mars causes a lot of static electricity. Could that be harnessed for some type of like electrical current? Do you think?
You'd have to figure out how to capture that, and I think that would be very difficult to do
I mean,
that. So.
just from like rubbing a balloon on my cat, he like electrocuted me the other day.
So that's how we're going to power our Mars base. We're not going to take
cats.
we're not
Kitty
going to
discharge.
we're not going to take solar panels. We're not going to do kilo power. We're just going to take cats and rub balloons on them all over them. So
I volunteer for this mission.
very good, very
He had
good.
electric shock like from his nose, and he like freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh, poor cat.
So we talk about all of the things getting there and all the potentiality for death and everything there. But one of the things that you pointed out, Lisa, which is very important, is the psychology of everything that happens there. Let's remember that a day on Mars is just about 40 minutes longer than it is here on Earth.
Right.
There have been multiple studies done on multiple teams for multiple Mars missions, when those engineers and those folks who are initially working on Mars time for that mission, where they basically go into work 40 minutes later every day in order to handle that, everyone, absolutely everyone, night owls, early risers, people who take in as much caffeine as possible, people who abstain from caffeine, everybody essentially becomes perpetually jet lagged.
No, that's a horrible thing.
The studies have shown that the human circadian rhythm resists attempts to catch up to 24 hours, 40 minutes. How's that going to affect the astronauts? And not just the astronauts, mission controllers as well. Because sure, we have people working with the International Space Station constantly, but that's on 24-hour time here on Earth. What happens when these perpetually jet-lagged mission controllers have to go in at certain times as well? Because a Mars mission is almost going to require more constant contact than the International Space Station is.
Okay.
Except you'd still have the communications delay as
You
well.
do have the
right?
delay, sure, but there is that problem where you have to really pay attention to everything, even though there's a delay.
Okay. Well, Ben brings up a point that I actually want to branch off of. He says, do these tests take into account actual sun up and sun down times?
They absolutely do. Yeah, they put on artificial lighting that is as close to sunlight as they can in order to do that.
Because, isn't it kind of just a matter of perception of, you could sleep longer if you want or sleep short? I guess what I'm imagining is, if the day is longer, I can still live how I'm used to within my typical sleep cycle and wake cycle, and just kind of ignore the fact that the sun might still be up or be down. Because you think about in Alaska, where they have days where it's just is it Alaska? I think it's Alaska, yeah. Where it's dark for 30 days and light for 30 days or 45 days. I don't remember the exact number, someone can correct me. But there's places on Earth where it's going to be bright, it's going to be dark. And I think that, we kind of just, I understand that there was tests done where they might feel jet lag, but I just wonder, what if we just kind of ignore the fact that the sun's rising and setting and don't try and match it and just continue with our own.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, that's what I would do, to be
most-
honest. I would just be okay, the sun's up, but I don't care, I'm going to sleep because I'm, in my own cycle of Earth.
So are
Most
you-
habitats are going to be either underground or covered with dirt because of the radiation problem. So why do you need to set your Mars schedule with the solar, what's happening with the sun, when you're not going to see it half the time anyway? Why not just
Exactly.
stick to 24 hours?
Right. As Iceland was, and Iceland was the place to do it. So maybe that's a
every
good place
place
for
is
people
above
to
the Arctic
test it.
Circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 23
Right.
degrees up.
North and south. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah.
everyone, so we're only going to send astronauts from Iceland.
No,
handle that
but,
as well.
but I just think
My
if you
family.
just kind of disregard the fact that the
Yeah.
sun's rising and setting. I know I should have remembered that too because my cousin's going to Iceland soon. I'm Alaska, but I think that just kind of what if we just disregard the fact that the sun's rising and setting and you kind of just do it on your own?
Yeah, we continue
Yeah.
on
And
That
our
way
own
you would
circadian rhythm.
keep your mission controllers on Earth time as well. You'd keep the whole
Keep it
mission
on
on
Earth
Earth
time.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to know what your Mars time is in order to engineering stuff like your solar panels and stuff. But from an operations perspective, it would just be like working on Earth.
We've solved a
Brings
thing.
up
Yeah.
a point here.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're one step
You're
closer to
welcome,
Mars.
space community.
And is it going to be underground? Samuel Price says the Mars base will be underground anyway.
Well, here's the thing.
Is that
at the moment, every
I didn't
single
know about this.
Mars analog mission that we've got, and I have photos of most of them here. So you have the High Seas mission, which is the one I was a part of, and it is a dome on the side of a volcano, Mauna Loa, in Hawaii. It's a dome. It's not covered with dirt or anything. There are 2 windows on the outside that you can see the outside. So that's High Seas. And then you have the MDRS, or the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. Above ground installations in a barren landscape, but not covered in dirt. You can still see the outside. There are still windows. Mars 500 is kind of a little bit closer to what might be ideal on actual Mars. There are definitely less windows, but it's still not actually underground. It's above ground. It's an enclosed environment. But none of these analog missions are actually going as far as to simulate the whole radiation shielding type thing to induce that same kind of psychological response. Like, you know, with high seas, if you wanted to, you could just step outside. But, you know, if we really want to test this psychology, should we put people in a cave where it's going to take a while for them to actually escape, just like it, well, if they don't
Sounds
die
like the same way in
automatically,
New York City.
what it would be like on Mars? Or do we cover a habitat with like 5 meters of soil like we might actually do on Mars?
We should be doing that. Why aren't we? That's like,
the
sorry, I just
question.
didn't
Maybe
know
that's
any of
what's
this, and
holding
I'm
us
like,
back.
that's kind of common sense. Shouldn't that be what the actual tests are here on Earth to try and figure out what it's going to be like on Mars?
So maybe we should be
making
testing
it
as high
accurate
fidelity as possible. Yeah,
Let's
I
just do this
completely agree.
ourselves.
I'm down.
Yeah, another thing that I kind of want to touch on here as well, which is that if you go on a Mars mission, you are going to be in very close proximity to a group of people for a very long period of time.
Yep.
How's that going to affect people? Because
Yeah.
you could
Depends on
have
the people, doesn't it?
You need to have people that have excellent chemistry between each other. How do you develop that? Because you can't artificially induce good chemistry between people.
Right.
It's been tried before, and oh boy, it just does not work particularly well. So.
And that raises another great point with regards to the analog missions we have at the moment. For example, with my high seas mission, I had 9 days to learn my crewmates before you were meant to spend 8 months together. With MDRS, they're usually 2-week missions, and again, they're either people that have barely just known each other or have known each other maybe here and there, or unless, you know, it's a group that has consciously chosen, like they're already friends and they want to go do an MDRS mission together. The Mars 500 mission, they spent 6 months in training, which actually is a good standard of time to spend together. But I think for a real legitimate mission, I feel like these people need to know each other inside and out, like almost like as if they are family, like have known each other for years. To be able to have that kind of relationship that they're going to put each other first, like put the team first.
Yeah. Kind of like with the
and
Apollo program.
I was just about to say that Carrie Ann has a very good point in this, which is that it's not chemistry in as much as trust. And then Ozmaz01 on YouTube says you choose team and not individuals for that as well. So you look at people who are cognizant at understanding that they're a part of a system that works together to make that work, I suppose, is a good way to do it. Sort of like what you try to look at managerially to try to get the best out of a group of people, especially like an elite group of people. If you look at the way that groups like Skunkworks and others are managed, it is very much about individuals all contributing in one direction to make that happen. And it gets people very highly motivated. I mean, we've seen that with Skunkworks.
Almost like startup culture.
We've seen that with SpaceX as well, with their basically people on Mars. That is the goal. And it gets people super motivated in order to do that. So, yeah.
And I think also, like, just again to bring up AI, I think it would be really important because you could actually code probably an AI to be compatible with everybody or with yourself. And so I think, like, what if, like, each person had, like, a corresponding AI to be with them, to like R2-D2, you know, like, and having, like, you know, your own little droid. But I think that would be something really kind of important to realize, because that could be, like, you know, your go-to sidekick throughout the entire mission too. Just because, I mean, of course, what you're saying, it is a team and it is trust, like what Carrie Ann was saying, because you want that just, you know, to that reliant. Because if you don't have that form of like, oh gosh, you know, if this doesn't work out, I need to be able to rely on this other person, or like we need to be there for each other's backs. And, you know, and if you don't have that, then there's going to be a real lack in moving forward in a mission. So I think, yeah, those are all like super duper valid points. There's so many good questions in the chat too. I'm just like enjoying all this.
I would just add comforts.
Comforts.
The more familiar you are with your surrounding, the less stresses you have on you, the easier it is to interact with the people. Even if you don't enjoy that person, if you wouldn't hang out with them at a bar, you can still work with them and get the job done better if you are emotionally stable and you're happy. If you've got that coffee in the morning, like Death Wish coffee, if you've got your lip balm, you got your sparkly unicorn toy, whatever it is that you want, if you've got that thing that makes you comfortable, then it's going to be easier for you to get along with everybody else.
And Kevin F on YouTube asks, would you include couples? Would that create problems? Is this sort of we don't ever want to touch on this subject of going into that be something that we are going to have to actually end up realizing might end up being a part of a long-term mission to Mars?
I mean, here's
sort
the
of
thing.
the
It's like,
I mean, we never want to talk about it in terms of like officially with it, but is that going to be something that we're going to have to address?
If it was my choice, I would go alone. If I had a significant other, I wouldn't want them to come. Just because human nature multiple times has had an increased probability of some type of disruption happening, problems, divorce, whatever it is, that no, I don't think it's a good option at all. Zero.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
I lean toward that. But I think it does depend on the couple. So if they are, they're both astronomically minded or whatever, it's this was their life, both people's life dream.
A highly motivated couple.
Yes, like
essentially.
this is our goal, both as human and as couple.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, potentially. So,
Yeah, I guess so.
all right, just kind of to wrap up this roundtable real quick, just to go back to it. After having talked for a little bit, what do you all individually think is the biggest problem? And Lisa, we'll start with you over there. What do you think is going to be the biggest problem?
it's still everything, but I think the problem right now is that our analog missions aren't at the fidelity enough to be answering the questions that we need answered anyway. We need to improve our analogs before we can get the answers that we need.
All right, Athena.
Oh gosh, I don't actually know because we brought up so many other points. I think it would be probably just like health concerns. So we need to figure out how the human body can adapt, and until we figure that out, I don't think it's really going to happen. Yeah.
All right, Sarah.
I'm thinking maybe we need an entire technological update, like, because I know this energy-wise, it's out of the question at the moment, but something along the line, some 3D printer version of a replicator, something where we can take one resource and turn it into another somehow, so we can reuse and have better sustainability resource-wise.
Yeah, that's important. And I'm going to sort of piggyback on what you said, Lisa, which is everything. It's everything.
Yeah.
It's the dollars, it's the cooperation, it's the political will, it's the radiation, it's the relationships between the people on their way, it's the technology, it's the high risk of death, essentially, that we have going on with that there. So excellent from everybody here for our roundtable. And of course, we want to hear from you too. What do you think is the biggest hurdle for a crewed mission to Mars? Let us know in the comments below. And if it's a super good point that you got, we will put it on the show next week.
And
of
our
course,
community forum as well now.
yes, we do have a community forum. I don't have that right off. It's community.tomorrow.tv. Look at this right here. This is where you can come talk to us directly. So if I remember right, you don't have to be a patron in order to
this
get
is
in on
open
this.
to everyone.
That is right. It is
wow.
open to everybody. We want to see you there. Maybe you can even leave your question there as well. So let us know what you got there. So speaking of comments, we are going to come back from this break with comments from last week's show. So stay tuned. There's more tomorrow right after this.
Science. It both draws us together and tears us apart. Brings discoveries to cure us and threaten us. It is neither good nor evil. It is what we decide to make of it. There is so much more to learn, and we are curious. Together, let's explore the science of tomorrow.
All right, welcome back. Before we get going with comments, we just want to thank, again, all of our supporters. We've got Escape Velocity Citizens for $10 a month. We've got Orbital Citizens for $5 an episode, and Suborbital Citizens for $2.50 per episode. Okay, thank you so much for helping us make this show. We literally cannot do this without you.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Like, I love that number keeps getting. I love that the number of patrons keeps getting bigger, and
Fun,
that's
to get all
like
smart.
so good. Keep it up, y'all. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. It just amazes me that all of you are like, wow, this is great. But you get something out of it though. So it's not like we're just like taking it in. We give you something back more than just the show as well. So it's super, super cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Love it.
Oh man, so last week we had guests from the Gateway Foundation, And did anyone have anything they wanted to say about that interview?
I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah?
How neat was that?
I think it was cool. I hope that they really do end up getting what they want to do. That sounds like a really big step.
I want to enter their lottery.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, when I have money. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll chuck some money into that. So that's a good way to do it. So, all right.
All right. So our first comment we have from WeBlock on YouTube. We have, let's see, many industries started off this first counterintuitive notion. Okay, so let me try this again. So many industries started off this way, I'm thinking. So addressing the insanely rich with concept super smart cars home to cover for prototyping and streamlining until it becomes mainstream. A huge risk, but far from delusional.
Interesting.
Okay. So that's going back to the Gateway group, and
Yes.
they are.
So Gateway was
Yes.
their lottery and traveling on their first station, which is going to be called Von Braun. They're kind of marketing it to those people that have a lot of money. And this comment I think comes off of a lot of people in the chat room were like, this will never work. If you're only going with the people that are super rich, there's only going to be 10 people that can afford it. That will never work. You need to make it available to everyone first off straight away. Tesla, anyone?
Yeah.
I was about to say. I was just about to say. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a really good way to put it. The Roadster was the first thing that they put out,
Yeah.
and that was definitely well out of the price range of normal folks, some mere mortals, if you will. And then that Roadster helped make the Model S happen, which is something that became reasonable, I suppose is how you would call it. It became something that in its class, it was competitively priced and it was able to do it, which that ended up going in and helping make the Model 3 come in, which is now letting us mere mortals have a taste of battery electric vehicles and work with that as well. So, and in doing so too, it doesn't just end up allowing, it's tiered that it allows you to eventually enter the market for everyone to come in. But also it kind of adds a bit of mystique and prestige as well, because look at what you started with. You started with top of the line, and then we did the S, and oh man, that's still super good. So now we're coming down and we're going to give you the rarefied air of the Roadster and the S in this humble offering that
The
we have in
brand
front of
keeps
you.
that prestige.
Exactly, yeah, and
It's
that's
a-
really where it comes in handy.
Yeah, it's a common tactic. So you build the designer label, and I'm going to go fashion on this because that's the one that I know. You build the designer label, and then you make the name seem elite, and then you put it. You make a more affordable version. You get that on shelves in Target, and then everyone's buying the Vera Wang brand or the blah blah blah. So it's a common tactic, and it is a tried and true business model.
Yes. Yeah. I was just going to say, David Reddig in our YouTube chat is saying that even the cell phone was something only
good
the rich
point.
could afford at first, but now practically everyone has one. It just takes time.
Yeah.
So time, money, investment, and people actually buying what you have.
Making people want what you've got.
Yeah, and I was going to say,
Those phones
Tesla,
are this big.
how big is Tesla's advertising budget?
I don't know. Do you know?
Yeah.
It ain't big.
Oh.
It ain't very big. I don't know if it's zero,
Yeah, right.
but
Like,
it's
wow.
definitely not as big as, say, Chevrolet
Yeah, I've
or
never seen a
Ford
Tesla commercial.
or
Oh,
Jeep.
yeah, I've never seen a Tesla
Or
commercial.
BMW. So,
That's so
actually,
true.
I have seen a Tesla commercial.
Yeah?
Although
Yeah,
it
I've
was,
seen one that was made by Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut.
I was also going to say I saw one that was on top of a rocket, though.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah,
that
that one.
So,
That's
yeah.
a pretty big one.
That might actually put Ford's
Like the
annual
one
budget
and
to
only-
shame.
Yeah,
Very
that's like
good.
a 1 in every 10 year commercial.
Very cool. So,
All right. So from Reddit, we have Mount Cookie.
woohoo!
Love
Great
it.
episode,
Cookies.
Smiley face.
Cookies.
Thank you for all the effort you put in. I've always wondered if we did have a rotating space station, can we hook it up to a non-rotating section? How would we handle umbilical connections like power, water, other? This is a really great question, and I think the answer to that is the reason we don't have a rotating station yet. We don't know yet.
Actually,
Because if this part is moving and you want to get water from here to here, And then, but then how do you?
Yeah.
How does
The,
it?
the
rotating.
non-rotating part of your station doesn't necessarily have to be hooked up to the things that you need. I would imagine that the non-rotating part of your station would be excellent to perform microgravity experiments and science in that area, and then you could have people living in the rotating
Then
station.
how do you get from one to the other?
Very carefully.
Align the part that isn't rotating, so like the would it be like the axis turn point? It would be like right in the center where it's not really like this, because it's all turning, but then right here there's like a point there. Maybe
Right.
that's where they would dock it.
Yeah,
Just
so,
wanna-
so if you had, if you had a ring, right, and you could climb up the ladder, and the gravity or the acceleration that you felt toward the outside of the ship would lessen as you go up, and then you could, at the center point, you would be at 0G again, and then you could climb right into the non-rotating section.
Just want to point out that the Galileo space probe that went to Jupiter had a spun and a despun section as well, and there were a multitude of different instruments
I get
on
it now.
each section as well. So
cool.
So it is possible. I don't know if anybody has solved it in terms of like hooking up the water and other things like that, but in terms of like power and getting data and other things like that, yeah, it's been done
Yeah.
before. So
Cool. Okay, so Pham Nguyen from Community TRO-TV, howdy. During the interview, John from Gateway Foundation mentioned that the term starship culture was coined by a DARPA paper by David Barnhart. I tracked down the paper and I thought I'd share it here for anyone else interested. There it is.
yeah, there's the link. You're gonna have to manually put it in. You can't click on our screen. So
No, why isn't it
Enter
working?
question mark
Why is this-
DL equal. I've done that before.
that's pretty good. So
I just
I've
love that
typed in.
term, starship culture.
yeah, that is so cool, right?
That's the culture of tomorrow, kind of, right?
Exactly.
It's like we already exist.
Yeah.
Like just getting the thumbs up from Ben, that's why I'm cracking up. we already, that's how we work here at tomorrow. We already work like we're already on a starship. Everyone has an equal say, except Ben always is right, apparently.
Apparently. So yeah.
But, and
What?
you know,
This
and
is
it's always
news?
a two-way conversation between us and our community, just like it would be like a Star Trek future.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, from YouTube, we've got a comment from CocoFan50. Okay, even with gravity, cooking in space is going to have to use methods that don't produce a lot of smoke. Another thing is that you probably want to avoid using too many consumables or wasting large parts of the ingredients, because that's money wasted transporting stuff back and forth for no reason. Also, trying out cooking techniques in microgravity could be very interesting. Stuff we can't even think of doing on Earth might be possible in microgravity. I'm just a normal guy who likes to cook, but after thinking about some of this, I want to become a space chef.
That sounds cool. Yes.
We need to fix space food. Oh my goodness.
We do.
How fluffy would space ice cream be made in space?
Made in space, it'd be super fluffy.
I know.
Like you wouldn't even need fluff with Nutella. It would just, oh my gosh, imagine fluffy Nutella. Whoa.
Do they do fluff out here?
Fluff?
these
Yeah,
things?
I got fluff out here.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man, I haven't
Fluff
seen that
and
since
Nutella
East Coast.
sandwich. Yeah.
So to link this particular comment back to our roundtable
Yes.
discussion from this week,
Yes.
what we ate on high seas was like freeze-dried, like just that freeze-dried food that you had to rehydrate, and it was really gross. I actually have an image from the topic section of our media. I think the one that says dinner. So we had to cook our own food. This is the kind of food that we got to eat.
What is that?
That is rehydrated vegetables that I made into a stew. Now, I'm not a terrible cook, but that was pretty, like, okay, flavor-wise, it was all right. It was really salty because you need to put lots of salt so it lasts a really long time. And it had to be rehydrated, so the textures were all weird, and it was just like, it was not appetizing. And I don't know how I would have been able to eat that for 8 months and not go crazy. So I feel like we need to, like, just like this comment says, like, okay, you don't want too many consumables. You don't want to be wasting large parts of the ingredient. Like, you don't want to take like a whole thing of like, I don't know, celery, and you only use like this much part of the celery and you throw the rest away. That's a waste. But like, the best way to solve that is to use freeze-dried stuff, but then you end up with, you know, what you just saw, and it's gross. And
Yeah,
it's
it doesn't look very
it's not
palpable.
nice.
I definitely
Like,
would not want to spend 3 years eating stuff like that. So
Wait, I have a question. When you were talking about the toilets, you were saying that like you couldn't have a lot of liquids. You couldn't. You had to like limit your liquids. Does that mean also you have to limit your liquid intake? Because if you're having this stuff with a lot of sodium, I'm like, wait, that's really unhealthy.
But that was a really good point. Like, we were having a lot of sodium, so there was, you know, there was concerns that with all that salt in that food, we might be like elevating our blood pressure.
Yeah.
So that was kind of something
unhealthy.
that they wanted to monitor. But you need to have that salt in there to make that food last that long. But we never added any extra salt to our food ever.
There's other
No
forms
salt
of
shakers,
preservatives. I don't
nothing.
get this.
Yeah.
Fascinated by this. I've been doing some backpacking, and the backpacking foods, the pouches pre-made, they're actually pretty good. They've gotten really good at this. They're not super salty. Yeah. So there are several brands that make really decent dehydrated food for backpacking that
Yeah.
are. I didn't have that salt issue at all.
I was
So,
going to say, whenever I go backpacking,
Yeah.
I always take the mass penalty of bringing in nice food with
Yeah.
me. Because to me, food is very important. Food is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
social, and it's not just
it's
social; it's psychologically comforting as well.
It's a recharge.
It's definitely one of those. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I can go up and down a mountain and feel like hell when I come back. But if I get some really good mac and cheese with sriracha in it, oh man, that just that makes the day
Sriracha
perfect.
in
So,
space.
yeah.
That'd be so good.
well, I was going to say,
Sriracha.
on the International Space Station, there are a multitude of hot sauces because you kind of do lose, because of the fluid shift, you lose your taste, your sense of taste in space. So astronauts I've heard stories of some astronauts just slogging everything with hot sauce up there. And sriracha is one of the things that they're always taking up on the supply ship.
I love it.
Take a look at the next next manifest of those supply runs and look at how many sriracha bottles they're taking up, and holy moly.
I mean, that Progress launch that we had today, how many kilograms of stuff did it have? It had like 2,566 kilograms, that latest Progress launch. I think 2,000 of it was probably sriracha.
Yeah, obviously. So, yeah, actually it was all hot sauce, so including in the propellant tanks. They just moved it through Zarya into a dispense area. So, all right,
Okay.
moving on.
All
Derailed
right.
the show.
So from YouTube, we've got Rusty Space. I'm from Finland. Okay.
All right.
We're going metric versus imperial. So TVs are in inches, wheels are in inches. We use 2x4s, etc. Those exceptions don't really matter as long as the important stuff is in SI/metric units. The U.S. imperial system is nowadays defined by the metric system, so technically you are already secretly metric.
This is turning
Yay!
into the. This is turning
So-
into the
What I
new
just-
All right.
Pluto as a
Section.
planet. God.
So this is I think we're at 3 weeks, 4 weeks on this one.
Just stop. Stop.
Hold on, this is all news to me.
Stop.
Explain
Okay,
what's going
all
on.
right.
Oh my gosh.
I have no idea what's happening. Sorry,
Super
Jared.
quick recap. Several weeks ago.
I'm gonna go take a break while you recap on this really quickly here. So.
Several weeks ago, somebody in some story used an empirical unit, and the chatter went crazy. And then we got a comment the next show, and then there was a diatribe, and
Diatribe.
we had another Ben TED talk, and
Oh no.
it was great. It was great. And then eventually it went off onto time units as well. It was so fantastically,
Oh my
epically.
gosh.
This is literally the definition of epic. It is crossing time and large regions of space. But
I know
okay.
how we fix this. I know how we fix this.
We stopped talking about it.
No. So it's not a matter of metric versus imperial. Here's how you solve the problem. We create a whole new measurement system of tomorrow that is neither metric nor imperial, and then
Yes.
everybody is wrong.
Is it in unicorns?
No, it's in stodges.
Oh, we're doing the MIT route.
I think that's awesome.
So we're going to define this really quickly. 1 stoge, okay, and then 1/10 of a stoge.
There's a stoge, and then there's a mini stoge.
Oh wait, so you're a mini stoge.
So instead of football
are
fields,
you
we're going to use
twice?
stoges.
So is the regular stoge twice of you? And
Something
then-
like that.
So how many
right.
stoges make up a football field?
42.
42. So
answer
then we'll have to
everything.
multiply 42 by however many football fields make up what? Like a galaxy?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. This is going to be
All
really
right.
complicated for scripts. Well,
the
good thing we're
number
not
of
doing scripts
stoges-
anymore.
We don't
More
do
to light
scripts anymore, so
second.
it's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was awesome.
And
No, it is not.
Next.
It is not awesome.
Jared, welcome back. I see you are recharging
my
after
gosh.
your trip up the mountain.
XKCD. Oh my gosh. Okay, I just dropped my mic. I haven't seen
XKCD?
I haven't seen these comics in so long. I used to love this. Thank you for whoever just put this in the chat. I was obsessed with this when I was doing research. Oh my gosh.
It's okay.
I love these comics are the best.
Okay,
Anyway.
then you're going to read it.
They're not
All
even
right.
comics, they're like a, yeah.
So, Now we want to thank our ground support citizens. They give us $1 per episode, and they get their name in the show. During the third segment, they get access to our citizens-only hangouts and early access to After Dark, which is about to start. So sign up now.
Right now.
Right now.
Sign
get
up before the
now.
end of the show and you'll get it.
Operators are standing
Probably
by.
not. So.
Oh, that'd be fun on the opera.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.